The interstellar transit hub of Nova Crossroads stretched like a crystalline spider web, its transparent corridors hosting a living kaleidoscope of alien species. Soft bioluminescent panels cast ethereal light across the massive structure, reflecting off the varied skin tones, exoskeletons, and environmental suits of travelers from 1,000 different worlds. Helena Chen stood nearly invisible in the corner of the main transit hall, her dark gray utility jumpsuit blending perfectly with the station's structural supports. To the untrained eye, she appeared unremarkable, just another human technician waiting for an assignment. But her observational skills had been honed through generations of human adaptability, a trait that ran deeper than most realized. The hub's design was a masterpiece of interstellar engineering. Circular platforms floated at different levels, connected by gravity-defying transit bridges that shimmered with adaptive quantum fields. Holographic wayfinders constantly shifted, displaying information in multiple spectral ranges to accommodate the diverse sensory capabilities of different species. Most fascinating to Helena was the unspoken seating arrangement that seemed universal across every shared space. Humans invariably chose the periphery, back corners, edge seats, areas with maximum visibility but minimum direct attention. Other species noticed this pattern but seemed to misinterpret it as deference or timidity. A group of Viridian diplomats swept past, their iridescent scales reflecting the corridor's lighting in mesmerizing patterns. Their long, serpentine bodies moved with calculated grace, each movement a display of cultural superiority. They spoke in high-frequency tones that most species could barely perceive, discussing some intricate political negotiation. Just behind them, a cluster of silicon-based lifeforms from the Quartz Collective moved with mechanical precision. Their crystalline structures refracted light in complex geometric patterns, creating a walking light show that contrasted sharply with the human's understated presence. Helena watched a young human researcher being subtly redirected by station attendants. The automated guidance systems seemed programmed to gently push humans toward peripheral spaces. To an outside observer, it might have looked like systematic marginalization. But Helena knew better. This was a dance of strategic positioning that her people had perfected over generations of interstellar exploration. Her communication implant, carefully disguised as a simple ear accessory, captured and analyzed the ambient communication frequencies. Most species broadcast their intentions loudly, both literally and metaphorically. Humans, by contrast, had learned to listen, to observe, to understand the subtle undercurrents of any environment. A sudden fluctuation in the station's quantum stabilization field caught her attention. Most beings would have missed it, a microscopic variance that suggested deeper systemic stress. Her training kicked in, mental calculations running faster than most advanced computational systems could process. The station's design was a marvel of collaborative engineering, representing contributions from multiple species. Yet humans had been instrumental in developing several critical stabilization technologies, a fact rarely acknowledged in official histories. Their contributions often came as elegant solutions that solved multiple problems simultaneously, introduced so seamlessly that they appeared almost accidental. An announcement rippled through the transit hub, its multilingual translation waves cascading across different sensory spectrums. Most travelers continued their journeys, barely registering the routine communication. But Helena's enhanced auditory processing caught nuanced undertones, a slight hesitation in the transmission's quantum carrier wave that suggested potential systemic strain. Her posture remained unchanged. No sudden movements, no visible reaction. Just another human, seemingly waiting, actually gathering critical information about the complex ecosystem of interstellar travel. The back corner was not a place of weakness, but a position of ultimate strategic advantage. Around her, the galaxy continued its intricate dance. Civilizations rose and fell, technologies emerged and transformed, but some fundamental truths remained constant. Humans had learned that true power wasn't about being seen, but about seeing everything. And so she waited, watching, understanding far more than anyone realized. Another human. sitting quietly in the back, holding the potential to change everything. The quantum cascade failure began with a whisper, a microscopic fluctuation in the interstellar vessel's primary containment field that most species would have missed entirely. The massive transport ship, Starweaver Epsilon, carried a diverse complement of passengers from across the known galaxy. Its sleek design represented the pinnacle of collaborative interspecies engineering, a testament to millennia of technological advancement. Marcus Wong sat in the third row from the back, his worn datapad displaying complex quantum stability models. To the casual observer, he appeared to be a mid-level systems analyst taking a routine journey. His seat selection was no accident, positioned perfectly to observe, analyze, and respond to any potential irregularities. The first signs of cascade failure manifested as a subtle vibration. Most passengers continued their activities, oblivious to the impending disaster. A crystalline diplomat from the Prism Collective adjusted her ceremonial robes, completely unaware of the quantum destabilization beginning to ripple through the ship's core systems. 3 rows ahead, a group of silicon-based researchers from the Quartz Collective maintained an animated discussion about recent xenorchaeological discoveries. Their crystalline structures refracted the cabin's soft lighting, creating intricate light patterns that danced across the interior surfaces. Marcus's hand moved almost imperceptibly, triggering a series of diagnostic sequences through his seemingly ordinary datapad. Years of training, a combination of advanced engineering, emergency response protocols, and an almost intuitive understanding of complex systems, began to activate. The cascade failure accelerated. Most species had specialized emergency response teams. Humans had something different, a collective adaptive response that transformed ordinary passengers into a coordinated survival mechanism. Marcus caught the eye of a maintenance worker 2 rows behind him. No words were exchanged, but a complex communication happened in that split second. Sarah Rodriguez, the maintenance worker, had been reviewing repair logs when the first quantum fluctuation hit. Her background, a mixture of aerospace engineering, emergency medical training, and zero-gravity repair experience, made her more than just a routine technician. Like Marcus, she understood that survival was a collective effort. The ship's AI began to issue warning signals, but its response protocols were becoming compromised by the quantum cascade. Traditional emergency systems started to fail, a cascading breakdown that would have doomed most vessel complements. But humans were different. The maintenance worker stood, moving with practiced efficiency. A data analyst near the rear exit began coordinating communication channels. A retired pilot who looked like nothing more than an unassuming passenger began quietly assessing the ship's structural integrity. No panic, no confusion, just coordinated, adaptive response. The crystalline researchers finally noticed something was wrong. Their complex sensory abilities, typically far more advanced than human perception, were actually hindering their response. They froze, their intricate crystal structures beginning to fracture under the quantum stress. Marcus's fingers danced across his datapad, creating adaptive algorithms that began to stabilize the failing quantum containment fields. Sarah moved through the passenger compartment, her trained eye identifying critical structural weak points. The retired pilot began communicating with the ship's compromised navigation systems, finding workarounds that the original designers could never have anticipated. Passengers from other species watched in stunned silence. What seemed like a random group of humans was systematically preventing a catastrophic ship failure. Their response was not about individual heroism, but about collective survival, a fundamental aspect of human adaptation that most galactic civilizations had completely misunderstood. The quantum cascade began to slow. Stabilization algorithms, created in real time, began to repair the ship's critical systems. What should have been a total system failure was being transformed into a manageable crisis. Most remarkable was the calm. No shouting, no dramatic declarations, just precise, calculated action. As the immediate danger passed, the ship's original emergency systems finally began to respond. But the critical work had already been done. The humans who had been sitting quietly in the back had saved every single being on board, and most of them would never know how close they had come to total destruction. Marcus returned to his seat, his datapad now showing nothing more exciting than a simple navigation chart. Sarah went back to her repair logs. The retired pilot resumed reading a worn paperback novel. Just another journey through the stars. The Xenobiological Research Facility orbited a neutron star, its adaptive shielding constantly recalibrating to manage the extreme radiation and gravitational forces. Inside the station's most secure laboratory, a team of scientists from across the galaxy worked on the most perplexing biological mystery they had ever encountered: human adaptability. Dr. Elena Novak reviewed the latest genetic scan, her fingers tracing holographic projections of human DNA. The sample came from the passengers of the Starweaver Epsilon, the same group that had miraculously survived the quantum cascade failure. Each scan revealed layers of complexity that defied conventional understanding of biological evolution. The human genome was unlike anything in the known universe. Most species evolved along predictable trajectories. They developed specialized adaptations for specific environments, creating intricate but ultimately limited biological mechanisms. Humans were different. Their genetic structure appeared to be a living, dynamic system of near-infinite potential. A Viridian xenobiologist floated nearby, her multiple sensory tendrils analyzing the same data. "It's impossible," she murmured, her translation implant converting her high-frequency communication into standard galactic language. No species can maintain such adaptive complexity. Dr. Novak understood the skepticism. The scan showed genetic markers that could instantaneously reconfigure cellular structures in response to environmental stress. It wasn't just adaptation. It was a form of real-time evolutionary response that challenged every known principle of biological development. The research team had collected samples from humans across different environments: deep space explorers, planetary colonists, urban dwellers. Each sample told a similar story. Humans possessed a kind of biological flexibility that was less about physical transformation and more about fundamental survival potential. Their neural networks demonstrated an unprecedented level of plasticity. Where other species developed specialized neural pathways, human brains created complex, adaptive networks that could rapidly reconfigure themselves. A brain injury that would permanently disable most species could be overcome through rapid neural reorganization. The Quartz Collective's lead researcher projected a comparative analysis. Most species had genetic structures that were relatively static. Mutations occurred slowly, over thousands of generations. Humans seem to have a built-in mechanism for rapid, targeted genetic reconfiguration. "It's not just genetic adaptation," Dr. Novak explained, manipulating the holographic display. "It's a comprehensive survival mechanism that operates on multiple levels simultaneously." The samples revealed something even more extraordinary. Human cells demonstrated a unique ability to learn and remember stress responses, not just individually, but as a collective genetic memory. Experiences that caused survival challenges could be encoded into their genetic structure, creating a form of evolutionary learning that was unprecedented. A series of simulations ran across the laboratory's main display. Each showed how human biological systems responded to extreme conditions: radiation exposure, gravitational stress, chemical interactions. Where other species would break down, humans found ways to not just survive, but to thrive. The Viridian researcher's tendrils began to tremble, a sign of profound scientific excitement. "They're not just adapting," she communicated. "They're actively engaging with their environment in a way we've never seen before." Dr. Novak nodded. The human ability wasn't about physical strength or specialized capabilities. It was about potential, a living, breathing system of near-infinite possibility. Their biology was less a fixed state and more a continuous process of becoming. Historical records began to make sense. Humans had survived on a planet with extreme environmental variations. They had expanded across multiple planetary environments, adapting to conditions that would destroy most species. What had seemed like simple technological innovation was actually a manifestation of their fundamental biological nature. The research team realized they were looking at more than just a unique species. They were observing a form of life that represented a fundamental reimagining of biological potential. As the neutron star outside pulsed with massive energy, the laboratory remained a quiet testament to the most profound scientific discovery in galactic history. Humans were not just another species. They were a living demonstration of adaptation itself, quiet, unassuming, and infinitely more complex than anyone had imagined. Dr. Novick made a final annotation in her research log. The universe, she realized, was about to change everything it understood about life. The Galactic Council's secure archive was a marvel of technological isolation, a repository of the most sensitive information in known space. Massive quantum encryption fields surrounded the central data core, protecting secrets that could destabilize entire civilizations if revealed. Director Marcus Chen of the Interstellar Xenological Research Division stood before a holographic display, his fingers tracing lines of classified data that most beings would never comprehend. The files before him represented decades of hidden research about humanity, a story far more complex than any galactic citizen understood. The first layer of classified documents revealed a pattern of systematic observation. For centuries, advanced civilizations had been studying humans with a mixture of fascination and profound concern. Humanity was not just another species to be categorized. They were an anomaly that defied every established understanding of intelligent life. Genetic records showed something extraordinary. Humans possessed a unique form of collective adaptive intelligence that went beyond biological limitations. Their ability to learn, improvise, and overcome was not just a trait. It was a fundamental survival mechanism that operated on levels most species couldn't even conceptualize. Diplomatic communications from the past 2 centuries told a remarkable story. Humans had been consistently underestimated, pushed to peripheral roles in galactic interactions. But each interaction revealed a deeper truth. Every challenge presented to humanity was met with a solution so innovative that it fundamentally challenged existing paradigms. The Viridian Diplomatic Court had extensive files detailing human interactions. One particularly revealing document described an incident where a human diplomatic team resolved a centuries-old territorial dispute between 2 advanced species, not through traditional negotiation, but by proposing a collaborative solution that transformed the entire economic framework of both civilizations. Military strategic assessments were even more revealing. Traditional galactic warfare relied on specialized combat species, advanced weaponry, and complex strategic models. Human approaches were different. They saw conflict as a problem to be solved, rather than a battle to be won. Their strategies involved understanding, adapting, and ultimately transforming the fundamental conditions that created conflict. Technological development files showed a pattern of elegant, transformative innovation. Humans didn't just create new technologies, they reimagined entire systems of interaction. A seemingly simple communication protocol developed by a human research team had revolutionized interstellar data transmission, making previous systems obsolete almost overnight. The most classified section, marked with the highest security clearance, contained something truly extraordinary. Genetic research suggested that human adaptability was not just a biological trait, but a form of collective intelligence that operated across generations. Each challenge, each survival scenario, became encoded into a form of collective memory that could be accessed and utilized by future generations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead researcher behind these discoveries, had noted something profound. Human potential was not about individual capability, but about a collective adaptive response that could transform entire systems of understanding. The Quartz Collective's intelligence reports were particularly illuminating. They had been tracking human development for centuries, recognizing something that most species missed. Humans were not limited by their current state. They were defined by their potential for change. One particularly revealing document described a scenario where human researchers had solved a complex quantum stability problem that had stymied the most advanced scientific teams in the galaxy. They didn't approach the problem with specialized knowledge, but with a fundamental ability to reimagine the entire framework of understanding. As Marcus Chen reviewed the files, he understood the true nature of the threat. Humans were not dangerous because of their physical capabilities or technological advancement. They were dangerous because they could fundamentally change the rules of any system they encountered. The Galactic Council's greatest fear was not human aggression. It was human potential, the ability to transform, to adapt, to find solutions that no one else could even imagine. The holographic display flickered, casting shadows across Marcus's face. Humanity's greatest strength was not in being seen, but in watching, understanding, and quietly changing everything. The multidimensional challenge materialized in the heart of the Galactic Research Hub, a problem so complex that it had defeated the most advanced civilizations for millennia. Suspended in a quantum containment field, the challenge appeared as a shimmering, ever-changing geometric construct that defied traditional understanding of space, time, and logic. Dr. Elena Novak stood at the periphery of the primary research station, her posture casual but her mind racing with possibilities. Around her, the most brilliant minds from across the galaxy worked frantically, their advanced technologies and specialized knowledge producing nothing but increasing frustration. The Viridian Collective had deployed their top quantum theorists. The Quartz researchers brought computational systems that could process more information in a second than most species could in a lifetime. Crystalline intellects from a dozen different star systems bent their considerable mental capabilities toward solving the impossible problem. And yet, nothing. The challenge was more than a mathematical puzzle. It was a living problem, a multidimensional equation that seemed to actively resist solution. Every approach was anticipated, every strategy neutralized before it could take form. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had thrown their entire intellectual might at the problem and failed completely. A small research station on the edge of the facility caught Elena's attention. A group of humans worked with an almost casual approach that seemed almost dismissive of the challenge's complexity. No advanced quantum computers, no specialized alien technology. Just a few researchers, some basic computational tools, and an approach that appeared almost frustratingly simple. Miguel Rodriguez, the lead researcher, looked more like someone preparing for a casual outing than solving an impossible problem. His team consisted of individuals from diverse backgrounds, a former logistics coordinator, a marine biologist, an urban planning expert, and a musician. Their approach defied every conventional scientific methodology. They didn't compete, they collaborated. While other research teams fought to be the first to solve the problem, the human team began breaking the challenge down into fundamental components. They saw the multidimensional construct not as a problem to be conquered, but as a system to be understood. The Quartz researchers watched in growing confusion. Their specialized computational systems had produced nothing but increasingly complex failures. The human team was using what appeared to be laughably simple tools, adaptive modeling software, collaborative communication platforms, and an approach that seemed more like creative problem-solving than scientific investigation. Hours passed. The advanced research teams became increasingly frustrated. The human team continued their work, occasionally sharing a joke, taking short breaks, maintaining a level of calm that seemed impossible given the challenge's complexity. Something extraordinary began to happen. The multidimensional construct started to shift, not in response to the advanced alien technologies, but in response to the human team's approach. They weren't attacking the problem. They were engaging with it, understanding its fundamental nature rather than trying to force a solution. Miguel's team began to see patterns that no other research group had noticed. The challenge wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a system to be understood. Each breakthrough came not from specialized knowledge, but from a unique ability to see connections that others missed. The Galactic Research Hub fell silent. The human team worked with a combination of creativity, collaboration, and an almost intuitive understanding that transcended traditional scientific methodology. As the final pieces of the puzzle began to take shape, the other research teams realized something profound. This wasn't about individual brilliance or specialized knowledge. It was about a fundamentally different way of approaching complex systems. The multidimensional challenge began to resolve itself, not through force or specialized technology, but through a uniquely human approach of understanding, adaptation, and collaborative problem-solving. Elena watched as the impossible became possible. The humans who had been sitting quietly at the edge of the research station had just transformed everything the galaxy understood about problem-solving. Just another day of sitting in the back. The void between galaxies was not empty. It was alive with a predatory intelligence that defied comprehension, a phenomenon that had systematically erased entire civilizations for millions of years. Scientific records called it the convergence, a cosmic threat that consumed advanced societies with a methodical precision that suggested something beyond mere destruction. Dr. Marcus Chen reviewed the historical data with a calm that belied the magnitude of the threat. Star systems had vanished. Entire species had been reduced to molecular disassembly. The most advanced civilizations in the universe had thrown their most sophisticated defenses against the convergence, only to be consumed without a trace. Galactic defense protocols collapsed within milliseconds of contact. Quantum shields, designed to protect entire star systems, became nothing more than dust. Advanced warning systems detected the approach, but offered no meaningful resistance. It was a threat that consumed rather than destroyed, absorbing entire civilizations into some incomprehensible collective. The Galactic Council convened in absolute panic. Representatives from thousands of species gathered in a massive quantum communication chamber, their collective desperation creating a palpable energy that seemed to make the very fabric of space tremble. Humanity was not their first choice. In fact, they were almost an afterthought. A small research team gathered in a facility that seemed almost deliberately positioned at the edge of known space. No advanced quantum computers, no massive energy shields, just a group of researchers who approached the problem with a methodology that seemed almost frustratingly simple. Dr. Elena Rodriguez led the team. Her background was a patchwork that defied traditional scientific specialization. Part systems analyst, part cultural anthropologist, part adaptive problem solver. Around her, a team that looked more like a random collection of individuals than a specialized research group began their work. They didn't start with defense protocols. They started with understanding. While other civilizations prepared massive energy weapons and complex quantum disruption fields, the human team began analyzing the convergence as a system of interaction rather than a threat to be destroyed. They looked at patterns of absorption, methods of collective integration, the fundamental nature of how the phenomenon moved and consumed. The Viridian Diplomatic Corps watched in growing confusion. Their most advanced predictive models showed absolute destruction. The human approach seemed almost suicidally simplistic. Days passed. The convergence approached, consuming star systems with a methodical precision that suggested an intelligence far beyond conventional understanding. Each civilization it encountered was absorbed completely. Their knowledge, their technology, their very essence integrated into something larger and incomprehensible. But the human team saw something different. They realized the convergence was not a destroyer. It was a form of communication, a system of collective integration that sought understanding rather than annihilation. Every previous civilization had approached it as a threat to be fought, never considering that it might be trying to communicate. The team's solution was not a weapon. It was a method of translation. As the convergence approached the final defensive line of galactic civilizations, the human team transmitted something unprecedented. Not a signal of resistance, not a weapon of destruction, but a complex, multilayered communication that represented the essence of human adaptive intelligence. The convergence stopped. For the first time in millions of years, the cosmic phenomenon that had consumed countless civilizations encountered a form of intelligence it could not simply absorb. Humanity's approach was so fundamentally different, so unexpectedly adaptive, that it presented a new form of interaction. Galactic records would later show it as the moment everything changed, not through force, not through advanced technology, but through a uniquely human ability to see beyond the obvious, to understand rather than resist, to communicate in ways no one had ever considered. The researchers who saved everything sat quietly, as they always did, just another group sitting in the back, having changed the entire universe. The Galactic Council Reconstruction Chamber was unlike any meeting space in known history. Suspended in a quantum-stabilized environment, it hosted representatives from species that had previously been on the brink of mutual destruction. The convergence had changed everything, and humanity's role was now fundamentally different. Dr. Marcus Chen observed the proceedings from a peripheral station, his posture relaxed, but his mind analyzing every subtle interaction. Around him, species that had been mortal enemies for millennia now sat in collaborative proximity, their previous conflicts rendered meaningless by the recent cosmic revelation. The Viridian delegation, with their iridescent scaled representatives, sat next to the crystalline members of the Quartz Collective. Silicon-based life forms from distant star systems shared communication matrices with energy-based intelligences that had once been considered incompatible. At the center of this unprecedented gathering sat a small human delegation, not in positions of prominence, but carefully positioned to observe and facilitate. Elena Rodriguez, the lead xenocommunication specialist, presented a series of adaptive translation protocols that had emerged from their encounter with the convergence. It wasn't a presentation of human superiority, but a collaborative framework for understanding complex interspecies communication. The true revolution was not in the technology, but in the approach. Previous galactic interactions had been defined by competition, territorial claims, and complex hierarchical structures. The human method demonstrated something entirely different, a way of understanding that saw complexity as an opportunity for collaboration rather than a challenge to be conquered. Holographic displays showed how the human team had developed communication matrices that could bridge seemingly incompatible forms of intelligence. The convergence had been more than a threat. It was a form of communication so advanced that it had been misunderstood as destruction. Most remarkable was how the human delegation presented their findings. No dramatic declarations, no claims of heroism, just a methodical breakdown of how different forms of intelligence could find common ground. They had essentially created a universal translation method that went beyond language, a way of understanding that transcended individual species limitations. The Quartz Collective's lead researcher examined the data with growing fascination. Their computational models showed something unprecedented, a communication framework that could adapt in real time to different forms of intelligence. It wasn't about converting one language to another, but about understanding the fundamental nature of communication itself. Historical records began to shift. The human approach to the convergence was now being understood as more than a singular event. It was a demonstration of a fundamental approach to existence, one that saw potential where others saw barriers. Representatives from species that had previously been on the verge of mutual destruction now found themselves sharing research, developing collaborative technologies. The human delegation facilitated these interactions with a subtle skill that seemed almost invisible. They weren't leading, they were enabling. A series of adaptive protocols emerged from the discussions. Technologies that had been developed in isolation now found common ground. Scientific research that had been compartmentalized began to flow between species in ways never before considered possible. The most advanced civilizations realized something profound. Humanity's strength was not in technological superiority or military might. It was in their ability to see connections that others missed, to understand systems rather than simply interact with them. As the reconstruction proceedings continued, the human team maintained their characteristic approach. No demands, no claims of credit, just a quiet facilitation of possibilities. The Galactic Council's historical records would later show this moment as a fundamental transformation. Not a human conquest, but a human contribution. a reimagining of how intelligent species could interact. Outside the quantum-stabilized chamber, star systems that had been on the brink of mutual destruction now began collaborative research projects. Technologies emerged that combined the best capabilities of multiple species. Communication matrices expanded to include forms of intelligence that had previously been considered incomprehensible. Marcus Chen watched the proceedings with a subtle smile. The humans who had always sat in the back had just redesigned the entire framework of galactic interaction. Just another day of quiet transformation. The Galactic Nexus Station hung in space like a living crystal, a testament to the fundamental transformation that had occurred in the wake of humanity's unexpected contributions. Generations had passed since the convergence, and the universe had changed in ways no one could have anticipated. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez stood at the peripheral observation deck, watching the intricate dance of interstellar traffic. His position was deliberate, not at the center, but where he could observe everything. It was a trait that had become synonymous with human approach to exploration and understanding. Young researchers from 100 different species moved through the station, their collaborative work a living demonstration of the communication frameworks developed decades earlier. The Viridian students worked alongside crystalline researchers. Energy-based intelligences shared computational spaces with silicon-based life forms. What had once seemed impossible was now the standard of galactic interaction. Holographic displays tracked ongoing collaborative projects, adaptive technologies that emerged from the unique human approach to problem-solving. Each project told a story of connection, of finding potential where others saw only barriers. The universe had learned that strength was not about dominance, but about understanding. The station's core was a marvel of collaborative engineering. Each section represented a breakthrough in interspecies cooperation, with technologies that adapted and transformed in real time. Quantum communication matrices allowed for levels of understanding that had once been impossible, but the most remarkable aspect was how these advanced systems appeared almost casual in their complexity. Marcus reflected on the stories passed down through generations. The humans who had sat quietly in the back, who had solved problems by seeing connections others missed, who had transformed galactic understanding not through force, but through collaborative intelligence. A young researcher approach, a hybrid being representing multiple species, her genetic structure a testament to the new forms of interaction that had emerged. She carried a historical research project, exploring the fundamental shift that had occurred in galactic civilization. "Why do humans still choose to sit in the back?" she asked, her communication implant translating her question with subtle nuance. Marcus smiled. It was a question that had been asked for generations. The answer was not about limitation, it was about potential. Sitting in the back provided the best view, the most comprehensive understanding. It was a strategic position of ultimate observation and possibility. The station's historical archives told a remarkable story. Humanity had never sought to dominate or lead in the traditional sense. They had transformed galactic interaction by showing a different approach to existence, one of collaborative intelligence, of seeing potential in complexity. Computational displays showed the evolution of interspecies communication. Where once there had been conflict, now there was a dynamic, adaptive framework of understanding. The communication methods developed during the convergence had become the standard of galactic interaction. Outside the observation deck, a massive collaborative research project moved forward. Species that had once been unable to communicate now worked together on challenges that spanned multiple dimensions of existence. The project looked almost casual in its complexity, a living demonstration of the human approach to problem-solving. The young researcher continued her questions, fascinated by the historical transformation. Marcus understood that each generation needed to rediscover the fundamental principles that had reshaped the universe. It wasn't about being seen. It was about seeing. The universe had learned that the most profound transformations often came from the edges, from those who observed carefully, who understood deeply, who saw connections that others missed. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt, to understand, to find potential where others saw only barriers. As the station continued its endless dance through space, the legacy of those who sat in the back continued to shape the future. Not through dramatic declarations or shows of force, but through a quiet, persistent approach to understanding the fundamental nature of existence. Marcus looked out at the stars. Another generation of quiet observers was preparing to change everything. Just another day of sitting in the back.